The morning sunlight spilled across our suburban street, bouncing off freshly washed cars and manicured lawns like it was rehearsing for a toothpaste commercial. I was halfway down the driveway, juggling my coffee, when I heard the sharp screech of tires and an irritated voice slicing through the peaceful neighborhood hum. "What do you think you're doing?" I froze mid-step and turned. There she was, Mrs. Karen Pritchard, our HOA's self-appointed sheriff, hands planted on her hips in a pose perfected for public meltdowns. I blinked, trying to take in the full spectacle of her blindingly white cardigan battling the bright morning sun. Good morning, offered, cautiously polite. Good morning, good morning, good morning. You bought that Tesla for your son? He's too young. Her voice cracked on the last word, an impressive theatrical pitch only a Karen could achieve without effort. I glanced at the gleaming silver Tesla in the driveway, the license plate already customized with my son's initials. The car practically purred with anticipation for its first adventure. "Yeah," I said, sipping my coffee as it might stabilize me. "He's 16. He's been saving for months. I thought he earned it." Karen's eyes bulged, and she flapped her hands like an alarmed pigeon. "Earned it? Earned it? Do you know what the hoe will say? What will the neighbors think? He's a child. A child." I could feel my pulse quicken as my son peeked from behind the garage door, grinning as he'd just been handed the keys to the universe. "Mom, can we?" "No. Absolutely not." Karen cut him off mid-sentence. Her glare was somehow icy and fiery all at once. "I will not stand by while you corrupt the youth with electric luxury." I had to fight the urge to slow clap. Only in this neighborhood could a 16-year-old with a Tesla trigger a scandal. But as Karen stomped closer, phone in hand probably dialing some HOA emergency hotline, realized this was just the opening act. Before I could respond, she leaned in so close I could smell her coffee breath mixed with bargain bin perfume. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "I guarantee it." And with that, she stormed off down the street, muttering about board meetings and neighborhood decency, leaving the Tesla and my very excited son gleaming under the morning sun. I took a deep breath, watching her retreat, wondering if we had just triggered a full-blown suburban war. By mid-afternoon, our once calm cul-de-sac had transformed into something resembling a live crime scene. The Tesla sat in the driveway like a shiny trophy, and I could already feel the neighbors' eyes peeking through the blinds. Every clink of a coffee cup, every squeak from a mailbox made me tense. Karen had allies. I knew it. Sure enough, at 3:15 my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello. This is the HOA," a woman said, her voice sugary sweet, but trembling underneath. "We, received a complaint regarding your son's vehicle." I leaned against the car, trying not to laugh. "Complaint? He's 16, licensed, fully insured, and very excited about his new Tesla." There was a pause. Then, "Well, the board is concerned about neighborhood image." Behind her, Karen's furious voice shrieked, Tell them exactly what's happening." Her righteous outrage crackled through the speaker. I sighed. Neighborhood image? It was a car, not a moral catastrophe. "Sir, ma'am, we just have rules," the HOA rep stammered as Karen continued bellowing in the background. "Parking, appearances, children with expensive vehicles. It's unusual." Unusual? That was the problem? My kid's hard work and independence were unusual now? I hung up, both annoyed and darkly amused. My son leaned against the hood, scrolling his phone, blissfully oblivious to the chaos. "Mom," he said with a smirk, "she's gonna explode, isn't she?" "Like a pressure cooker," I muttered, watching Karen pace the sidewalk, waving her hands like she was conducting an orchestra of doom. I could practically hear the dramatic soundtrack swelling. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps that rattled the glass. My stomach dropped. "Karen again. We need to talk," she announced, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. "I've drafted a formal petition. The board will support me. This cannot stand. I cannot allow it. I simply cannot." I motioned for her to sit, though I had no idea why. Nothing could slow her down now. She unfolded a stack of papers with the intensity of a general preparing for battle. eyes blazing. "And you're really just going to hand over this rocket ship to a child?" Her voice trembled between horror and disbelief. "I'm giving him responsibility," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Not a rocket ship. He's capable. He's careful," she scoffed. "Capable? Careful? Oh, honey, you have no idea." And that's when I realized this wasn't about a car at all. It was about control, fear, and some Karen-sized obsession with how the neighborhood should look. I just hoped my insurance covered emotional trauma inflicted by outraged neighbors. The door slammed behind her as she left, and I stared at the Tesla, wondering what new level of absurdity she'd escalate to next. The next morning, the entire neighborhood felt shifted tight, uneasy, like the stillness before a suburban hurricane. I stepped outside with my coffee, expecting birdsong and the usual parade of dog walkers. Instead, I was greeted by a battlefield of bold warnings staked across lawns. Bright neon signs screamed messages like "Neighborhood standards matter" and "Safety first, no child's toys on our streets." I squinted, immediately recognizing Karen's unmistakable handwriting. Of course, subtlety had never been part of her vocabulary. My son leaned over the Tesla's hood, munching a granola bar. "Mom, this is insane. She's at war with me and the car. I think she's gunning for both," I muttered. The Tesla gleamed smugly in the sunlight, as if it knew the chaos it had unleashed. By noon, things escalated again. A knock at the door revealed Mr. Thompson, one of Karen's loyal lieutenants, clipboard in hand. "Good afternoon," he chirped with forced cheer. "Just a friendly reminder. The HOA guidelines prohibit unapproved vehicles in driveways for residents under 18. I blinked. "Friendly reminder?" I echoed, dryness dripping from my voice. "You mean the new policing children as cars policy?" He coughed. "It's procedural. We're simply enforcing rules." Right on cue, Karen materialized behind him, arms folded, eyes narrowed like a hawk on surveillance duty. "Exactly," she said sharply. "We can't have teens flaunting luxury vehicles. It sets a terrible example, bad example of what's saving money." I asked, fighting the urge to roll my eyes. Karen gasped, as though I'd insulted the sacred foundations of suburban civilization. "How dare you mock the standards of this community?" It felt like we'd walked onto the set of a live-action drama, forced into being extras in a very small, very unnecessary tragedy. By late afternoon, things took a darker turn. Sticky notes began appearing on the Tesla's windshield. "Unsafe for your age. Consider your neighbors," and the most dramatic of all, "The board is watching." Each note felt like a miniature declaration of war. I could practically see Karen crouching behind hedges, ruler in hand, measuring our moral shortcomings. My son, sensing my rising irritation, smirked. "Mom, she's taking this way too seriously. She's losing it. I think she's trying to get a restraining order against enthusiasm, honestly," I replied, rubbing my temples. "You might not be wrong." By evening, a new twist landed. A letter from the HOA, complete with official-looking stamps, arrived on our doorstep. I tore it open, certain it contained threats, fines, maybe a demand to exile the Tesla. Instead, it held an invitation, a mandatory neighborhood meeting to discuss recent disturbances regarding youth and vehicular ownership. I stared at the letter, then at the Tesla. This wasn't just about a teenager with a car anymore. This was a full-scale neighborhood siege. And I knew deep down that Karen wouldn't stop until she had orchestrated maximum theatrical chaos. The HOA meeting was set for 7 p.m., the precise hour when suburban passive aggression reached peak performance levels. I arrived early, hoping to claim a quiet corner, far from the explosion I knew was coming. My son trailed behind me, vibrating with a mix of nerves and excitement, like he was about to face the last boss in a video game. The community hall smelled faintly of disinfectant and tension, a combination that made Karen's presence feel even heavier. Chairs were arranged in rigid, unforgiving rows. Neighbors filled, each one, looking both curious and anxious, eyes darting around like they were afraid guilt might land on them, too. And there she was, Karen, perched at the head of the room like a general in full-blown command mode, clipboard gripped like a polished shield. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice ringing like echoing church bells. We're here to discuss a very serious matter. She paused, scanning the crowd with a glare sharp enough to slice through metal. A very young man in our neighborhood has obtained a Tesla. I felt my son tense beside me. I stifled a smirk. Her dramatic buildup was almost impressive. And we must ask ourselves, she continued, leaning forward with theatrical intensity, what message does this send to the children of our community? Are we encouraging recklessness, entitlement, excess? I slowly raised my hand. Karen's gaze snapped to me like a spotlight. Yes, she said, tone tight. I think he's a responsible kid, I said evenly. He has a license, insurance, and he's handled the car with care. The Tesla isn't a toy. It's a vehicle. He deserves some independence. Gasps erupted around the room. Karen clutched her pearls both figuratively and literally. Her allies murmured in agreement, their disapproval swelling into an audible rumble. This is about neighborhood safety, she cried. Safety, standards, and decency. We cannot allow such reckless behavior to go unchecked. My son nudged me. Mom, this is crazy. I know, I whispered, keeping my voice steady, but inside, I felt the pressure rising. Suddenly, everything became clear. Karen wasn't worried about safety. She was performing control. Each neighbor's gaze was another tool she wielded like a weapon. Then came the moment that made my jaw drop. Karen pulled out a thick printed petition pages loaded with signatures, some real, some likely coerced, demanding that all vehicles under minor ownership be removed from driveways. She slammed it on the podium with triumph. This, she declared, is the will of the community. The room erupted, some in agreement, others in shock. The tension crackled like static electricity. I could feel the presence of the Tesla in my mind, like some symbolic guardian, and I knew this wasn't just a debate anymore. It had become a confrontation that could spiral wildly out of control. As voices rose, and the meeting dissolved into a heated argument. Karen locked eyes with me steady, unblinking, and I realized with a sinking certainty that whatever she had planned next, it would be absolutely epic. The night after the HOA meeting, the whole neighborhood felt like a powder keg. Every sound seemed louder than usual in the tense, quiet streets. When I stepped outside, I half expected to find Karen crouched behind a bush with binoculars or setting up a full-blown surveillance operation. My son followed me out, practically buzzing with excitement, eager to admire the Tesla under the soft glow of the streetlights. Mom, she's not going to let this go, is she? He asked, grin stubborn and unfading. Nope, I sighed. She's in full Karen mode now. There's no coming back from this. Sure enough, the next morning, Karen's car was parked directly across from our driveway, strategically, of course. Her window was down, her expression sharp as a hunting bird. In her hand, she waved a thick stack of flyers, each one carefully designed to warn about the dangers of teenagers behind the wheel. At this point, I honestly wouldn't have been surprised if she'd donned a crown. Before I could react, our usually quiet neighbor, Mr. Lou, approached, looking worried. I saw the flyers, he said awkwardly. She's really serious. I know, I muttered, keeping my voice level while the Tesla shimmered behind me almost smugly. This is next-level obsession. Later that day, I heard the unmistakable sound of a car creeping slowly around the block. I peeked through the window to find Karen driving a borrowed minivan, leaning out with all the seriousness of a crime scene investigator. She scribbled fiercely into a spiral-bound notebook, muttering reckless, irresponsible, community hazard, with all the intensity of someone preparing a federal report. That's when I realized this wasn't merely irritating anymore. It was personal. Meanwhile, my son, blissfully unaware of the rising suburban warfare, poked his head in. Mom, can I take it for a spin? I hesitated, glancing out the window at Karen's hovering minivan. I think we need to handle this carefully. By mid-afternoon, the situation took another leap into the absurd. A knock rattled the door, and there was Karen again, this time armed with a clipboard, a tape measure, and an energy level that could power a small city. We need to document everything, she declared. This car, its usage, its influence on safety. Her eyes swept across our driveway like an investigator building a case. I leaned against the doorframe, trying not to laugh. You do realize it's just a car, right? Her gasp was dramatic enough to echo. Just a car? You're encouraging entitlement, irresponsibility, chaos. Right then my son revved the Tesla's engine, testing the acceleration. The smooth electric whir filled the air, and Karen jumped back like she'd been physically hit. See? She shrieked. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Dangerous, uncontrolled energy in the hands of a minor. I stepped forward, resting a hand on the Tesla's hood. Or a responsible kid enjoying himself in a completely safe environment. Her jaw tightened to a razor edge. This is not over, she stormed off, slamming gates and leaving sticky notes fluttering behind her like confetti. My son laughed triumphantly while I watched her retreat, knowing she'd be back with something even more elaborate. Saturday morning arrived crisp and quiet, the kind of day that makes suburban life look flawless on Instagram. I sipped my coffee on the porch, hoping against all logic that Karen had finally burned through her fuel supply. My son, glowing with excitement, polished the Tesla like he was prepping a championship contender. Then I heard the familiar screech of tires, followed by a shriek I could recognize anywhere. Karen had arrived, with reinforcements. 2 neighbors marched beside her, clipboards in hand, measuring tapes ready, all radiating the smug authority of self-appointed enforcers. They approached our driveway like an invading army, eyes locked on the Tesla as if it were a ticking bomb. Good morning, everyone, greeted, my tone calm, masking my weariness and amusement. Lovely day for discussing a car. Karen's glare was icy enough to freeze concrete. We're here to enforce neighborhood standards, she announced. We're documenting everything. Safety, decency, responsibility. I raised an eyebrow. You do realize my son is legally allowed to drive, right? She gasped dramatically, clutching her pearls as though she'd just witnessed humanity's downfall. Legal? That's irrelevant. Moral standards, ethics, community guidelines, those matter more. My son, officially done playing an extra in Karen's theater, slid into the Tesla. Mom, I'm going for a quick drive, he said with a grin. No, Karen shrieked. Absolutely not. You cannot. Before she could finish, I stepped in. He can. He's responsible. And honestly, I think this neighborhood needs a reality check. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. Her voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. You will regret this, I smirked. Maybe, but at least we'll get a good story for the Hoa newsletter. With that, my son backed out smoothly, the Tesla's silent hum filling the air. Karen flailed her hands like she believed she could stop the car by sheer force of will. Her reinforcements exchanged looks torn between loyalty and common sense. As he drove off, blinds lifted across the street, neighbors whispering behind glass like a live soundtrack to the moment. Karen stormed back down the street, muttering about next steps, already plotting retaliation. I leaned on the Tesla's hood, breathing in deeply, savoring the fragile moment of calm. When the street finally settled, I realized something important. Karen's fury might be unlimited, but her power was not. The Tesla gleamed quietly, a symbol of small victories, independence, and the sheer absurdity of suburban obsession. I glanced at my son, who was beaming. Worth it? I asked. Totally, he said. Though she's probably showing up tomorrow with a new plan. I laughed. Then we'll be ready. Some battles are just too ridiculous to lose. As the sun dipped behind the perfectly trimmed hedges, I knew the neighborhood war wasn't over. But for today, we'd won. If you felt the tension in this story, smash that like button, because standing your ground is how you fight nonsense. Subscribe to Karen's Hub for every real-life showdown where ordinary people take back control. And tell me in the comments, how would you handle a Karen like this?